Hi and welcome back to the course. In this video we're going to look at HTTP verbs. HTTP is one of the most popular protocols, one of the most popular ways of creating interactions and allowing interactions between two internet-connected elements, such as your computer and another computer. The first thing we want to look at is what is a web server? This course is all about creating web servers, so I think that kind of gives you a bit of a hint. Now, a web server has many definitions. One of them is it's a piece of hardware, like a computer is. Another definition is that it is a piece of software, and this piece of software is designed to accept incoming web requests. Now, if this sounds like Chinese, which I hope doesn't, it doesn't sound completely foreign, let's have a look at what web requests are as well. But first, a quick example. Google has many web servers. And whenever we go to http://www.google.com in our browser, such as Google Chrome or Safari, what we're doing is we're sending something to one of their web servers. We don't know which web server, but we know it's one of them. And when we send something to the web server, the web server can then decide to respond back. It may not respond, as we'll see in a moment. So what is it that we send to these web servers? Well, when we go to http://www.google.com, we send exactly the following. This is what the web server sees. So when a user, such as ourselves, accesses the Google homepage, one of their servers somewhere receives this piece of information. Get/http/1.1, and the host is google.com, www.google.com. So what does this mean? Well, this is what's called a GET request. And the server just sees that get/http/1.1 and the host name, which is not here. So the get is called a verb. It tells the server, to some extent, what we think the server is going to return. So what is expected of the server. The slash is the path, which is what we want out of the server. And finally, http/1.1 is the protocol, and this is the most popular HTTP protocol, but now we're also experimenting with HTTP/2 as well, which is a faster and more efficient version. So this is really all the server sees, and when we create our own web server applications, we're going to see something very similar. So what? So is that everything? Well, actually, yeah, that's all the server sees. And the server sees that, and then there's some code. And the code is what the server runs on, and that allows it to make a decision as to what it's going to respond with. So different servers may interpret the GET request in many different ways, and they'll respond differently. For example, the server may give you an error if the path is not found, in this case the /. It may give you an error if HTTP is not supported. For example, if it's a mail server and only supports SMTP, or if it's an FTP server, and so on. It may give you an error if the server is currently unavailable. But it may also not give you errors. It may also give you useful stuff, such as HTML code, which is what it normally does, at least in Google's case. It may also give you some text. It may give you nothing. If the server is not configured to give you anything, then it just won't give you anything back. So what else? Well, going to any page with your browser, such as Chrome or Safari or Firefox, will always do the same. It's always going to do a GET request. So here's a couple examples. For example, going to the login on Twitter page, which is https://twitter.com/login. That performs the GET request get/login. As you can see, up to the .com is the host name, and anything after that is the path of what we're requesting. So in this case, the host is https://twitter.com, and the path is /login, which is what comes after. Similarly, for this other page, we're requesting /download/Mac, and you can see that Google Chrome has a nice color and it tells us what the different parts are just by looking at the color of it. Other browsers don't do the same, which is a bit of a shame. And finally, google.co.uk, the host is https://www.google.co.uk, and the path in this case is just the /. By now you may have realized that the / is the root, the sort of home page if you wish. So when we just go to a page, that normally just requests the home page, and that normally is just a /. So the differences between these three servers are just on what the server responds with. Every server sees essentially identical requests, requesting different paths, granted, but the only difference is what the server responds with, and in Twitter's case, they respond with the Twitter login HTML page. In the GetSCM case, they respond with the GetSCM downloads for Mac HTML page, and in Google's case, they respond with the main Google homepage. Which seems fairly obvious, but really when we create our own web servers, we're going to see exactly the same as they do, but we're going to respond with slightly different HTML code. So what I want you to realize is there's no magic going on here. All the server is seeing is a piece of data coming in, and then it's responding with another piece of data, and these servers all work in the same way. So what else? Well, going to a web page will always do a GET request. So no matter where you go, the server is always going to see the same thing. That's because the browser, such as Chrome or Safari, is configured to do a GET request whenever it accesses a page, but there's also many other things that we can do, such as post instead of get, we can do delete, we can do put, options, head, and there's many more actually. And once again, this is just a piece of data that we're sending the server, and the server then can respond differently to each, but they normally have the same meaning for each server. So all servers will respond to a post request in similar ways. All servers will respond to a delete request in similar ways, in the same way that all servers respond to a GET request in similar ways. That's because these things are so widely used that they've nearly become a standard now. So the crux of this lesson is the HTTP verbs. So here's what they normally mean, which doesn't mean that they will always mean this, but it does mean that this is a fairly common meaning. So for the GET, normally means to retrieve something. For example, when you go to the Google homepage, you're retrieving the Google homepage. In the case of an API, you may do something like get/item/1, and that presumably retrieves an item identified by 1. So 1 may be the item's ID or something like that. You may do a post, which for the server means receive data and use it. Doesn't really tell you how it's going to use it, but presumably if you do post/item, that may create a new item, say. Also, when you do a post request, normally you'll have to send some data along the post request. We're going to look at how to do that. And this data, in this case, may be a piece of JSON, which is name and price, and then presumably the server would create an item called chair with price 9.99. Presumably. Again, we don't know unless we look at the code. A put request means make sure that something is there. Notice how it doesn't say create things or do anything, it just makes sure that something is there. So if we do put/item with some data again, that may create a new chair to make sure that the chair exists. Or if the chair is already there, it may update the chair, change the price. Again, to make sure that that item is there. But unless the put request allows for duplication, then that's what it'll do. First it'll create it, and then it will update it. And finally, we can also do delete, which tends to mean remove something, such as delete/item/1, and presumably that would delete the item with ID number 1. Now we've looked at 4 of the most important HTTP verbs, but there are many others, and we won't be looking at those in this course, but nevertheless it's worth knowing that there are other types of HTTP verbs that we can use. So that's everything for this video. I wanted to introduce you to the concept of the way the web works and how these HTTP verbs behave, because in the next video we're going to look at REST APIs, and these verbs are going to come in really handy there. So without further ado, I'll see you in the very next video.